time goes by, there may be other coalitions that pop up. There may be one for the San Joaquin Valley. There may be one for rural counties. So I'd like to keep the options open to join other coalitions or sub-coalitions that better suit the county's interest. And to authorize the Public Works Director, with the consent of the CAO, County Council, letters to Cal Recycle and any related state, local organizations regarding the impacts of 1383 on Kings County and suggesting modifications to state law, regulations, and policies related to solid waste collection, recycling, processing. And Parveen from KWRA is on the line. If you have any questions that I can't address, I'd like to ask her to try. So that's the recommendation. I'm open to any questions you may have, and I'll do my best.
Yeah. So what happens if we do not support this bill?
I think the worst case scenario would be the often touted $10,000 a day fine, and that would be part of a compliance order that the state would put us under. Now, Dominic informed me yesterday that although the implementation plan must be in place by the end of 2021, and enforcement will be required shortly thereafter, Cal Recycle is not looking at fining people or coming down very hard until 2024. I think I understood that correctly. I haven't verified that with him, but he got that from a source yesterday. So if we look at this rosy picture that we have until 2024, that's when Cal Recycle would come in and they would put us under a compliance plan, and fines would follow shortly thereafter.
And our other counties, they're all counties are doing this, correct?
Not just all counties, all cities, and there may be some other agencies that are required to do that as well.
And
all counties.
Measure G, is that my trash, my choice?
Yes.
So I can understand a business, you know, calculating what comes off the table after someone leaves. They can collect it separately. That's an added expense. But how do you monitor someone's own home?
Monitoring, as I would envision it, would be the responsibility. It would be the responsibility of the solid waste collector to report to us if someone is not complying based on the fact that they're not using an organic stream. We would then have to follow up with the I think in your specific example, we would have to follow up with the resident and see if that is the case. And if they truly are not meeting the requirements of 1383 or local regulations and ordinances adopted pursuant thereto, you would be required under 1383 to enforce it and to penalize.
Wow. I remember Clean Your Plate Club, so there's not much leftovers. What I don't eat, my dogs eat. So I don't know how you monitor that.
What we're doing right now is under the mandatory organic and recycling plan is we are allowing people to self-certify. We've sent out letters from 600 businesses and people. You and I spoke about this. You check the box whether you produce 4 cubic yards of waste a week or not. If you don't, you're good. You can certify that to us. If you do, you tell us how you dispose of it. We take you at your word. Now, because of, I believe it's a direct result of COVID, the amount of recycling has gone down in the state in the last year. Cal Recycle has now implemented one of their statutory allowances to reduce that 4 cubic yards down to 2 cubic yards. We're going to have to contact the same people that we contacted last year and say the threshold is now 2 cubic yards. If you produce more, you have to recycle, you have to self-certify.
Okay, that's a lot of food.
It's huge.
Okay, any questions or comments for Kevin?
You know, yeah, Mr. Chair, the difficult part is going to be also for schools that are open 187 days a year, but yet have to comply with a program 12 months a year. And so it's going to be difficult for some of those organizations to gear up a program that's only good for 9 months. And yet have to pay for it 12 months out of the year. And so it's not an easy process. It's going to be very, very difficult to bring these projects into line.
Well, I know that the dairy industry are already going that direction with the biodigesters. So will it be mandatory for all dairies to be compliant with that?
All businesses will be required to be compliant with the provisions of 1383. Correct. I know that's not a great answer, but
So it's going to even push the smaller dairies out faster.
Right.
Okay. Supervisor Peterson, you got a question? No?
No, just move to join the organization and push back.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Peterson, second by Supervisor Neves. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for good news. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs,
Yes.
Richard Valley,
Aye.
Doug Verboon,
Yes.
Craig Peterson,
Aye.
Richard Fagundes.
Yes.
Okay, 5 in favor. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to go on now to elections. Loopy, are you available this morning?
Don't vote.
Loopy, are you voting right now? Do you see him on there anywhere?
Online.
Lupe, you're muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. How are you guys doing today?
Very good.
Thank you for allowing me to provide you with a quick update on the developments of the 2020 general election. We are 7 days away from our November 3rd, 2020 general election. First off, I would like to say a special thank you to all of my staff for their hard working and dedication as we approach the 2020 general election. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. The first topic I would like to discuss is the polling places, ballot drop-off locations. We are going to be starting the polling place locations will be in service starting October 31st, Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're going to continue on till Monday, November 2nd, and we'll be operating November 3rd from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The locations are as follows: Avenel High School Cafeteria, Corcoran Rec Gymnasium, County Kings Multi-Purpose Room, Longfield Center, Sierra Pacific High School Gymnasium, and the Lemoore Masonic Temple. We also have 8 official ballot drop boxes throughout Kings County. The boxes are located in the City of Armona Senior Center, Avenel, the Avenel Branch Library, Corcoran, at the Corcoran Area Transit Amtrak Station, Hanford, Kings County Government Center, Home Garden Community Service District, Hanford High School East Campus off Grangefield, and in Lemoore, we are located at the Lemoore Sparks and Rec on Cinnamon Drive and at the Central Union Elementary School. I would like to provide you with a quick update on voters. As of yesterday, Monday, the 26th, Kings County had a total of 60,100 registered voters. A breakdown of those voters are as follows: 23,874 Republican, 19,995 Democratic, 12,484 no party preference, and final 3,747 other party. In regards to ballots, as reported last week, on October 5th, we mailed out 57,293 ballots to the registered voters of Kings County. On October 16th, we sent out a second supplemental mailing of 9,914 ballots. And yesterday, October 26th, we did our third and final pool for 867 ballots that were mailed out from our office, meaning that we stuffed, prepared the ballots through the weekend and mailed them out yesterday, Monday. As of today, we're at 54.8% of the 2016 general turnout, which was 67%. And we are thus far collected 5,958 ballots from our ballot drop boxes, 66 from Armona, 27 from Home Gardens, 606 from Hanford High East, 44 from the Avenel Library, 144 from Amtrak Station in Corcoran, 426 from the Parks and Recs in Lemoore, 51 from Central School, and 4,594 from the drop box located in our parking lot at the Government Center. 3,375 ballots have been received in office, meaning they were dropped off with extra help in the front door or at the counter. 9,872 came by way of U.S. Postal Service, for a grand total of 19,205. That is 19,205 ballots received as of yesterday. Out of 19,205 ballots received, there is a challenge of 0.005 for 112 ballots that have been challenged due to no signature or missing signature. There is a process that we have in-house that follows every time we collect a ballot that has no signature or this signature. So we send out the voter a letter for them to sign that letter and send it back to us. And then the signature is confirmed or challenged again. We are hoping that we make great progress by Friday to start tabulating during the week. I'm hoping that we can start that by tomorrow. As you may know, the last day of registration was October 19th, last Monday. And so far we had 20 conditional votes, meaning those votes were received after the registration deadline of October 19th. With respect to the reports of unofficial ballot drop boxes, we continue to monitor the situation. We have not received any further complaints or concerns from anyone in regards to ballot drop boxes. In regards to potential double voting, we have received 2 complaints. Both of them have been referred to the Secretary of State Investigative Services Unit for additional investigation. My office is committed to ensuring that the transparency and legalities of the election are followed, and we are cooperating with authorities to ensure that any person attempting to vote or to vote twice be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law if warranted. As a reminder, November 2nd and Tuesday, November 3rd, the Elections Department will be closed. Any election services will be referred to the multi-purpose room, which will be converted into a vote center starting Saturday, October 31st. The Elections Department will serve as the hub, per se. It will be the place where the ballots will be tabulated, where the poll watchers can come and watch the process in regards to preparation of ballots. And this is where we will be reporting to the Secretary of State on election night. Is there any questions I may answer at this point?
Thank you, Lupe. Any question or comment for Lupe? Looks like you may be about halfway there in collection, so should make your job a little easier come election day. So hope it works out for you, and I appreciate your report.
Mr. Chairman, you're welcome, and I ask that you please continue to support the Elections Department. Please continue to share the message with our voters that if they are planning on attending or visiting a polling place, they should expect long lines. We will be implementing CDC guidelines. We will be implementing social distancing. Every single piece of item they touch will be disinfected at every single voter. So please share the message with your constituents, the public, friends, family, that if they plan to visit a vote center, they should plan to wait in line. And again, please vote early, vote by mail, or drop it in one of our ballot drop boxes. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I heard vote early, vote often, so thank you very much.
Not often, just early.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lupe. Appreciate your support, and good luck the next week, and try to stay calm.
Oh, we will. We got it. Thank you.
And healthy.
And healthy, yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're going to go to item F, Human Service Agency, Sonia Begay. Sonia, you're there this morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear.
All right. Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Sonia Begay, Human Services Agency Director. This item may look familiar. It's a little bit of a repeat from last week. That we did take some additional steps. So I'm back requesting for your board to authorize me to engage with the real estate broker services of Hotel Specialist Inc. to assist with the negotiation of purchase of the Stardust Motel on county's behalf and to help us execute all the documentation by December 2nd. And also to approve the commission rate of 5%, which we would reimburse utilizing the home key project. I will be back before your board. So this is really continuation of the last week's item. I will be back before your board with additional items related to this, because one of the key items related to this is the standard agreement and acceptance of the project, which will be coming to you soon. Without that, all of the other steps are really cannot be executed. For this particular item, because we now have selected a broker, I would appreciate your approval so we can move forward. From the last week's conversation, some of the due diligence items that your board directed have been started. However, we haven't entered an agreement. One of the key items that was missing for us was that the agreement between our and the motel owners had to be dissolved. We now have that cancellation, so we can start upon your approval of this item. And I'm going to end there and ask if there are any questions.
Any question or comments for Sonia?
If there are no questions, comments, Mr. Chair, move as outlined.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Neves, second by Supervisor Peterson. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs,
Yes.
Richard Valley,
No.
Doug Verboon,
Yes.
Craig Peterson,
Aye.
Richard Fagundes.
No.
So with 3 in favor and 2 against, this is not a 4/5 vote, is it?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, this is approved as presented, 3-2. Thank you very much, Sonia.
Thank you.
We'll go on now to administration.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This item is a weekly update regarding the pandemic. We'll first start going over any activities on the state side for the week, federal side, and then talk about the county. I'll turn it over to Director Edward Hill, and he'll talk about the health department update. So looking at the state activities, I just wanted to let your board know that there's a number of groups talking and working on COVID-19 through CSAC and some of the other agencies. There's one called the Kitchen Cabinet Group, and there's also a California State Association of Counties Tier Working Group that are meeting and talking about the tier structure and some of the different metrics involved with that. Excuse me, that outlines the state's blueprint for safer economic structure. So I wanted to let your board know that. Also, there's updated federal guidance on the coronavirus relief funds that was released this week. Department of Finance released some more positive news. As of September 30th, the general fund revenues for the state were $8.7 billion above the 2020-21 Budget Act estimates. So given the state's unemployment rate remains at 11%, up from the pre-pandemic levels of 3.9% last February, the unemployment's at 11%. California has seen a surprising strength in income tax revenue through the duration of the crisis. The Legislative Analyst's Office suggests that the state's reliance on higher income earners who have been less affected by the recession may be the reason for the state's budget condition appears to be performing better than its overall unemployment figures would suggest. Further, strong personal income tax revenues in September may also be the result of stock prices having recovered beyond the pre-pandemic levels. Health and Human Services Secretary Mark Galley announced last week that the state will be partnering with 3 southern counties that are in the purple tier. That would be Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino. And they'll be working with them on the blueprint for a safer economy, similar to how they worked with the Central Valley counties. They'll be working with those different agencies to help them get out of the purple. The Newsom administration and legislative leaders came to an agreement on the $200 million for home key this past week. So That included the $200 million for the coronavirus relief funds for the Home Key program, an additional $200 million to go towards childcare services, food banks, and $15 million for diaper banks. On the federal side, there's been no agreement yet on additional COVID-19 relief packages, but the negotiations continue between Speaker Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin. Even if they're able to reach an agreement, it remains unclear if the package would be voted on before or after the election. Funding for state and local governments remains one of the final issues that is still under discussion, and counties continue to strongly advocate for direct, robust, and flexible relief funding to counties of all sizes. The president, a number of actions were taken by the president regarding COVID-19, including executive action during the third quarter, and he signed 3 memorandums and 1 executive order. The first presidential directive addressed the expiration of the enhanced $600 unemployment benefit that was authorized by the CARES Act, which lapsed July 31. The executive memorandum authorized FEMA to tap into disaster relief funding to provide renewed federal unemployment assistance for individuals who lost their jobs due to COVID-19. So beginning in August 1, the federal government is authorized to provide a $300 weekly benefit, which states require to provide an additional $100 match for a total of $400. To meet the match requirements, states are permitted to use their coronavirus relief funding allocations. These payments are slated to end on December 6. Another memorandum issued by the president instructs the Treasury Department to temporarily halt the collection of payroll taxes. Subsequent guidance released by the department clarified that the employers can defer payroll taxes between September 1 and December 31 for those earning less than $4,000 every 2 weeks. However, employees will ultimately be responsible for repaying the taxes. According to the guidance document, the most likely way for the employers to recover the funds will be to double withhold payroll taxes beginning in January of 2021. In addition, President Trump signed a memorandum on student loan payment relief, which requires the Department of Education to waive all interest on student loans held by the federal government through the end of 2020. Finally, the president directed the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to consider whether a ban on evictions is needed. The previous congressionally mandated eviction moratorium ended on July 24. The order also requires the Federal Housing Finance Administration to take action to promote the ability of renters and homeowners to avoid eviction and foreclosure. Citing public health risks due to the pandemic, the Centers for Disease Control on September 4th declared a moratorium on renter evictions through December 31. In order to be protected, renters must fill out a form and provide it to their landlord. However, once the CDC moratorium expires, all back rent would be due. It should be noted that the federal moratorium does not supersede stronger protections outlined in California's recently enacted COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act of 2020. On the county side, the county still continues to meet weekly at its Emergency Operations Center. The health department is still working, and I'd like to turn it over to Director of Public Health, Edward Hill, and he will give you an update on that front.
Thank you, Rebecca. Ed, are you there this morning?
I am. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Morning.
Before I get started with our numbers and my normal update, I would like to provide additional clarification regarding Supervisor Peterson's question about the funding on our previous items. I apologize, I didn't get my hand raised in time. The funding used for the positions that your board approved today is a separate set of CARES Act funds. The ELC CARES Act funds will last for 2 years and will not expire December 2020 like the CARES Act funds that we're all familiar with. I just thought I'd provide that clarification because I didn't want there to be a misunderstanding that those funds will be expiring in December and they will last for 2 years. During that 2-year time period, it's expected that, or not expected, speculated that public health funding from the state will likely be modified secondary to COVID-19. We'll also seek additional funding through grants and other programs. So I just wanted to provide that clarification.
Thank you.
Moving forward, again, I'd like to start with the basic practices that we can all use to protect ourselves and our loved ones from the spread of communicable diseases such as COVID, which is wash your hands frequently for 20 seconds or more. Don't touch your face with unwashed hands. Stay home if you're sick. This is, again, a big one that we're seeing. Too many people coming to work sick and then finding out that they have COVID. Stay hydrated with water and cover your face with face coverings to help protect yourselves and your loved ones. Our current numbers for today, individuals or number of tests collected so far is 70,193. Results pending are 379. Currently monitoring 1,385 individuals. Our total cases for the community since the outbreak began is 4,606. Unfortunately, 75 deaths, that's 51 community and 24 associated with skilled nursing facilities. Total recovered, 3,995, and our current active cases are 536. Our skilled nursing facilities in Kings County have remained stable at 173 total cases, 0 active at this time with 173 recovered, and again, unfortunately, 24 deaths. Our state prison outbreak, there are currently 3,764 since the outbreak began, 362 at Corcoran, 464 at Saddif, and 2,938 at Avenal State Prison. Collectively, they have tested 36,092 times with 16 pending results. Active cases is currently at 849. Recovered cases, 2,907, and unfortunately with 8 deaths. 1 individual hospitalized, not here, but that is in Bakersfield. We saw a very large increase in new positive cases last night from Saddif at 119 overnight. We've already reached out to the state to get them involved. We have a call scheduled with the Unified Support Team today to discuss this. Again, our concerns remain the same, which is a possible healthcare surge in our county, as well as the staph infections that will be carried through our community as this continues. So again, I'll be able to provide more updates once we reach out and coordinate things with the state this afternoon. We continue to watch hospital data closely. The increase we saw last week seems to be stabilizing both locally and regionally. As of yesterday, the local hospital had 22 COVID patients with 1 in the ICU. The Porterville Development Center still remains in the warm status, which means it could be stood up within 72 hours. We currently are still maintaining a 60-day supply of PPE for all of our healthcare facilities. Mobile testing program site scheduled this week. It was at the Kings County Complex yesterday. It's at Lemoore High School today. It'll be at the Corcoran RAC on Wednesday. Thursday at Hacienda Post-Acute. It's off on Friday. It's also off on Saturday since it's Halloween. And Sunday it will be at Avenal High School. We have received approximately 12,000 by next now antigen testing kits. Again, these kits are antigen test kits, and they can only be used on symptomatic individuals within 1 week of symptom onset. So they're not ideal for surveillance testing, but they're better used in areas where you're likely to have higher chances of encountering individuals that have symptoms, such as hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, correctional facilities, and the like. The state has established the priorities. I went over those twice, so I won't go over them again today unless you would like me to at the end of the report. We have been in touch with many of our partners who have indicated they wanted these kits, but now they're beginning to change their mind as they work through the reporting requirements that the feds have on these kits. But I'll continue to update you as these things change. Last Monday, we were approached by the state to participate in a testing pilot program this week with the new PerkinElmer lab that is being stood up by the state in Valencia. The state goal is to increase lab capacity by 400,000 tests per day by November 1st, and they asked us, Tulare and Kern, to participate in this pilot. In usual fashion, they scheduled the call at 1:30 and wanted us to answer them with participating agencies, locations, site coordinators, and all the details by noon the following day, so they didn't give us a lot of turnaround time. And as usual, the state provided us with very little details that we knew all of our partners would ask, but thankfully, public health staff, local schools, and Adventist Health pulled together on an extremely short notice, as mentioned, and they're actually going to make this happen. The goal was to collect 200 samples on Wednesday, October 28th, that's tomorrow, and 400 samples on the 29th and 30th, respectively, so 800 samples there. The state's going to provide all of the testing kits and software and training for the registration and tracking, as well as lab capacity at the new lab and reporting to CalReady. The county has to provide the staff to register the patients, collect the samples, and the logistics of getting the samples to Valencia each day and notifying the patients of the results. And when I say the county has to provide, that includes the staff at the schools and the staff at Adventist Health. The current plan is to have the resources shipped directly to public health, and we will distribute to all the local schools that will be participating. The school, with staffing assistance from Adventist Health, will collect the samples, and public health will pick them up and transport them to Valencia each day. We have also teamed up with Tulare County, so all of our samples can be transported together in a good show of unity and regional approach to this testing effort. And this was a huge lift, and I couldn't be prouder of public health staff, the schools, and the hospitals for pulling together and making this happen on such short notice. In light of that, the state also rolled out their new testing models available to the counties along with their possible associated costs. Again, in unusual fashion, they could not answer most of the questions, and they only give us, a day and a half to make our decision. The options were expanding the capacity at the existing OptumServe test site. This is the site at our day reporting center. Increased testing in partnership with existing partners. Establishing a pedestrian fixed site model. This would be for counties that don't already have an OptumServe site like we do. Establish a drive-through fixed site model. Establish a traveling team. Establish a mobile model. Establish a local health jurisdiction operated community site. We ended up choosing establishing the local health jurisdiction option, which has the least amount of cost and risks associated with it. This provides us with a great deal of flexibility that we don't have now with current testing models. Much like the pilot, the state will provide all of the testing kits and the software and training for registration and tracking, as well as the lab capacity of the new lab and reporting to CalReady. The state is promising a turnaround times of 24 to 48 hours. We'll see if that comes to fruition as they stand up that lab in Valencia. The county will need to provide the staff to register the patients, collect the samples, and the logistics of getting the samples to Valencia each day and notifying the patients of their results. The current plan for these resources is to be shipped from public health, just like the pilot, and we will distribute them to local schools, the jail, and public health clinics as necessary. We'll also be able to use these resources with our mobile unit should the federal support ever be demobilized, which, with what's going on in the Midwest, I anticipate we may get that call any day now. This was the most logical option, given that the state did indicate there would be a share of cost to the counties, but couldn't really articulate or provide any details on what that cost would be. All of the other options had price tags that ranged between $158,000 to $573,000 per month. And again, it's undetermined what the cost or the share of cost of the counties would be. Our program that is designated to or designed to support essential workforce and their associated quarantine needs is currently serving 18 households with a total of 51 households served so far. We have created and continue to promote this. We also have expanded this program scope based on the state's new equity metric requirements. We've been holding our regularly scheduled follow-up calls with the State Unified Support Team, and we work with them through any pending issues. They also are very responsive anytime we have needed them. I had to call them yesterday for an item, as well as the items that I mentioned today with what's going on at SADF. We were holding a call with them, so they've been very responsive and most helpful, which is very appreciative. Our planning efforts for the possible release of the COVID vaccine continues, and we're holding regular calls with the California Department of Public Health, and we'll update you as we get new information, but not much has changed so far. The state has released new guidance for personal care services, outdoor live professional sporting events, and theme parks on October 20th. I'm going to go over the major components. So these aren't totally inclusive, but they do cover the major items. But for more detailed, we recommend that these organizations go to the California Department of Public Health website to find out more details. This change, the personal care services are now allowed in the purple tier, or the most restrictive tier. They do require face coverings, employee training, regular compliance and evaluation, outbreak protocols, contact tracing of clients, which is most helpful, written notification to employees, ventilation, cleaning, and disinfecting protocols, and physical distancing requirements. Outdoor live professional sports stadiums and racetracks. Currently, the guidance if the county is in a purple or red tier, there is no, they do not allow live audience at all. If the county is in an orange tier, they allow outdoor only at 20% capacity. And if the county is at yellow, they allow outdoor capacity at only 25%. The following also modifications apply to both these, whether the county is in orange or yellow tiers. They can only sell to customers traveling with a 120-mile radius. They must include designated parking spaces. They are not provided or allowed to provide will call or sell tickets the day of the event. Eating and drinking is only permitted in the seats and must be delivered to the seats. Operators must follow the additional modifications in the issued guidance for specific areas such as gift shops, hotels, trams, shuttles, and food services. Theme parks, this doesn't really apply to us, but they are not allowed in the purple or red tier. They do allow 25% capacity in the orange tier, and it's only for smaller parks. That's 15,000 participants or less. Outdoor attractions only. All indoor items are closed. Tickets for these are for those who reside in the county of origin only. In other words, you can't go to Disneyland if you live in Kings County. Must follow additional guidance as specified. And then for the yellow tier, all parks permitted with the following major modifications. They can only operate at 25% of their capacity based on design and operating capacity. Again, all indoor dining is only at 25%. They have to follow all the additional guidance for the respective sectors, again, hotels, gift shops, and things of that nature. Our current number for the state's metric this week, our new cases per 100,000 is at 4.6, and we are seeing increasing numbers. This is a slight increase from last week. The overall county-wide testing positivity is at 2.7%, which is also an increase of 0.7%. Testing positivity in the lowest quartile of the HPI has jumped to 5.5% from 1.4% last week. And what this means is our new cases per 100,000 and testing positivity for the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index still meet the red or tier 2 criteria, and our overall testing positivity meets the orange or tier 3 criteria. Our tests per 100,000 is currently at 292 compared to the state's 239. This is good news as we continue to test more than the state's median, which benefits us as the state will decrease our actual new cases per 100,000 as a result. We're able to accomplish this by the testing efforts across the county and larger events such as the testing event that just happened this last Sunday in Corcoran, which I will let Supervisor Valley provide the details for that event. But I wanted to thank him for setting up that event and ensuring it was a success. And then I also need to transition from the good to the warnings, because I want to be clear and remind everybody that last week I warned that even though our numbers are looking good, the more we open and the greater chance there's a spread of the virus. And, you know, these changes were kind of expected. Our staff are working to identify if there are any identifiable causes that we can really pinpoint and adjust accordingly. I also want to remind everyone that this is COVID and everything changes hourly. And I want to also stress that there's no guarantee that we won't have to roll back into a more restrictive tier. So we're asking everybody to not rush to get out and to test, or get out and go back to business as usual, to test frequently, and to remain diligent in implementing the measures to keep us all safe. We have already seen an increase in gatherings and events associated with Halloween, and again, we're hearing of new events for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So again, we're urging people not to get into a rush to get back to normal, as this may cause us to slide back into a more restrictive tier. We've seen a couple events last week that we're still waiting to see in 14 days if they had an impact on our numbers. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate your report. With the governor's new guidelines on Thanksgiving, where we can't have turkey, mashed potatoes, or cranberries, how do you see that working out? I mean, I know we got one supervisor that hands out turkeys, and the governor's gone against having turkey. You have to have single plate serving. Is there anything that we can do with that? I mean, I can't imagine that we're going to try to enforce people not to have Thanksgiving with their families. And if you have 5 kids, only 2 can come. So just want to know your thoughts on that.
Sure. Chairman Verboen, through the board, that's a great question. It will be impossible to enforce. I would just highly recommend that, you know, that individuals try their best to maintain the state's guidance on gatherings, do everything they can to keep everybody helpful or healthy, do everything they can to keep everything clean and sanitized to the best of their abilities. It's going to be a tricky event moving forward as we move into the holiday seasons when all the gatherings occur.
Yeah, it seems like he wants to put neighbor against neighbor when he's asking neighbors to rat out the other neighbor if they see too much going on. So it's going to be difficult to, going to divide our whole neighborhood if this happens. So hopefully people follow some of the guidelines and do what they got to do without getting caught, I guess. I don't know. I don't have any ideas. I know I got 4 kids. I got to pick 2, I guess, that could come over to my house. This seems like we're getting to be communistic here, and we're not
Hold it
allowed to.
outside.
What's that?
You can hold it outside.
I can hold it outside. What if it's raining?
Do us 2 days.
2 days?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be up to every individual household.
Either that or let the kids come over and you go somewhere else.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, see?
That's
There's
it.
always a way to do around it.
Yeah, I got to put some thought on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, any more comments for Ed? Supervisor Valley?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Operation Gobble is moving forward. Nothing's stopping that. More people now than ever could use the food. The sponsors, they're there with Corcoran Emergency Aid. They're dealing with that, and the turkeys are ordered, $10,000 worth of turkeys. So we're coming. Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions there. Back to Ed. Ed, when's our county going to be graded again? And what's your opinion on if you believe we stay in the red, we go up, and we go back? And then also, can you touch on the you brought up the topic a couple of times of this option that that you chose based on what the state offered. And so can you talk just a little bit more on that option? I'd like to know if we have the ability with that option to stay mobile with the mobile testing unit, but 2, if our folks are trained under this option to have the ability to do a drive-through mobile testing event. Can you talk about those things real quick?
Ed, can you unmute yourself?
I apologize. Here I am. Thank you, Supervisor Valley, to the chair. I'll address the last question first because I've already forgot the first question. I'll have you ask that again. Sorry, the unmuting threw me off. Yes, the option that we chose through the state's option gives us the most flexibility because the public health department would be the ones receiving the testing kits. So we would have the ability to continue to deploy our mobile unit. In addition to that, we would have the ability to deploy the mobile unit when and where we want, to include moves throughout the day, which we've been unable to do so far, which has been a barrier, so it'll be most helpful. In addition to that, yes, you're correct that because we will be the ones receiving the kits and doing the testing, we will have the freedom to do any model of testing that we would like to, including a drive-through. Also, it has been brought to our attention, thanks to your efforts at the Corcoran site, that there's some issues that we need to work through on registration. This will also allow us to equip our staff with iPads and the new registration software that the vendor will provide. The vendor's name is Color. It's provided through the state. The registration system is very simple. We would be able to be mobile with iPads to register people in lines that hadn't pre-registered, which also speed that process up. So in essence, the only requirement from them is we have to be able to order a minimum of 500 kits at a time, which will clearly exceed that. It also provides us the ability to distribute those kits to the schools, which will address their testing requirements as they open and their needs, which is most beneficial. In addition to that, it gives us all of that freedom, and it gives us currently unlimited lab capacity, which public health has not been able to use in the past. As mentioned before, Tulare, depending on the Tulare lab, depending on their workload, will limit us anywhere from 25 to 60 to 100 tests per day. The current limit right now is 50. So this lab capacity down south, the goal of this lab, again, by November 1st, is to reach 40,000 test samples processed a day. And then when they're up to full speed, which it's my understanding they're anticipating this at the end of the month, to being able to process 150,000 tests per day. Again, that will be a huge benefit to us because they'll cover the cost of processing the lab, they'll cover the cost of the kits, they cover the cost of the registration, and they cover the cost of reporting this stuff to CalReady, which is kind of what the federal mobile unit gives us now. And again, I have concerns with what's going on in the Midwest that I'm expecting a call any day that they're going to move that federal resource to the center of the nation, which would make sense. And I'm going to pause there to see if there's any further questions and if you could restate your first question.
Well, you covered enough on that. Thank you, Ed. The first question was, when do you anticipate the county getting graded again and having the ability to move up? I asked that question because I believe that just maybe another press release out to remind the people, as you're reminding us here in the chambers every Tuesday, but more importantly for the public to be reminded that, as you say, we're not out of this yet, and we're not normal. All anyone has to do is go to Tulare County and see that you're still eating outside in parking lots and on paper plates. And I think when we spend most of our time in Kings County, and especially in the bigger cities in the county, as you go there, you all you got to do is look around, and people think we're back to normal. So with those cases rising as you anticipate, I think that's good for the community to be aware of. Also for them to know that we have the ability to keep elevating up to get more capacity inside restaurants and in places of worship, and obviously the efforts that's being done for schools. So all that tied in, Ed. I'll leave that right there on the question of your thoughts on our next opportunity to get graded.
Thank you again, Supervisor Valley, to the chair. And that's a great question. And I've failed to mention this in the past. We are graded every Tuesday of every week. And the state releases those numbers publicly on their website. The numbers that I read to you this morning come from that report. We get a glimpse of it about 2 hours before it's published. And if we maintain the current trend, I think we'll be okay, meaning I don't think that we're in any threat this week or next week of rolling back to the purple. But it's a touch and go situation, and every event changes every day and every hour. As mentioned, we have the SATF event that is currently happening. Of course, inmates are not counted in our count, but the staff are. And as the infection rate passes through the inmate population, it will spread to the staff, which again is in our count. So right now our testing positivity rate for both the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index and the overall county continue to move on a downward trend. We did see a small spike last week, but we are trending down, which is a positive. Our new cases per 100,000 have increased. We were enjoying rates of about 8 to 7, anywhere from 7 to 10 cases a day. Those have climbed up to anywhere from 11 to 14 cases per day. Again, as we opened, that was expected, and as long as we test in volume and exceed the state's testing median, they downgrade our new cases per 100,000. But the way the system works is if either our testing positivity or our new cases per 100,000 meet the criteria for a more restrictive tier for 2 weeks in a row, we have to go through an adjudication process with the state. They did release new guidance yesterday that also stated that during that process, if there's no evidence that the increases will continue, they will allow a county to stay in their respective tier. And we will update our website with that information. I hope that answers your question, but right now our numbers are still looking okay. Again, I always say that with some careful optimism because it changes so fast.
Yes, and on that, Mr. Chair, I would ask that we also just remind our businesses. I mean, we have almost $5 million of our CARES funds that the board has put out to our small business program, with almost $4 million in the hands of those small business owners. But reminder that they signed a contract, and on that contract they signed with Lance and his staff is for them to push and to use those guidelines or safety mandates, whatever terms people are using today's as it relates to what's coming down from Sacramento and how we're supposed to conduct ourselves through businesses and as customers attending those businesses. That's hard money, has been said, that we dedicated to help that. And I would hope those business owners continue to do their part as they signed on to keep it safe. Mr. Chair, I'll wrap up with this. Since Ed has asked me to give the update on the Corcoran, I have some notes here. I do want to start off by first thanking our health department staff, the Fed staff as well, for that matter, but our Kings County Health Department staff that was there on Sunday. They had a very long day. They had the way we were set up. One was, I believe, a successful event, from meaning that working with the Catholic churches, we knew we would have a large amount of people at each mass during the day. And so when that first mass let out at 9 a.m., that was an English mass. And so now our health department had a long line where everybody came at the same time. The majority of the people, Mr. Chair, did not take advantage of the pre-registration. So that put strain on the health department to register people. They were doing it, I believe, manually by paper, then having to go sit down, input them into the system online. That took time, but that being said, they did an amazing job to deal with that. And then the 11 a.m. Mass, when that ended at 11, that was the Spanish Mass, and there was 3 times more people at that Mass. And so here they go again with another long line of people, and they're dealing with predominantly Spanish-speaking only crowd. And so the challenges with that, but they did very good. So to Nancy and Ed, please, again, thank your staff, Heather, Silva out there, the rest of the team. They just did a really good job. I also want to thank Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church in Corcoran for working with us to a lot of calls, the meetings we had early on to try to figure this out. They were very good logistically. They had church volunteers who helped us with canopy setups for the food, tables, chairs, a whole bunch of extras that went onto this to be part of the plan to draw people to this testing event and to make it an event versus just, pulling up to the train station in Corcoran and having the mobile unit there where we just weren't getting the numbers we needed. So I want to thank the Father Caesar from the church and Ulissa Gonzalez, their office manager, who helped a lot. And so I believe we, through this model with the churches, we were able to reach the Latino community that we know we have challenges with. We hit that. I believe this model ensured that the majority of the people that we tested were not only from Corcoran, but from Kings County, and not just staff from other events and testing people who probably don't live here in the county. And so this was very pure and reaching that farm worker family too, especially coming out of the Spanish Mass. And so, but we had a lot of help with that. Matter of fact, I need to thank the American Warriors of Central California and the Gold Star families of the San Joaquin Valley. They both donated for hot dogs that were free to the community there. As they got done testing, they came down the line to another canopy and they got their food. For the English Mass, we had a lot of donuts provided by them. And community members who just stepped up and brought a little something else. Vice Mayor Corcoran came by and donated 80 hamburgers and with the buns and everything. Matter of fact, she barbecued the 300 hot dogs and all 80 patties by herself. So really appreciate Vice Mayor Pat Nolan. Trying to wrap up here, Mr. Chair. As Ed pointed out, when him and I debriefed for a couple minutes yesterday, if we do have the ability to register people as they're in line, that will help, because we lost a lot of people who, as they were there and came out of the mass, it was a turnoff when they saw the line. And, you know, it wasn't a line that was moving very quickly because of having to register people. And these were families. I mean, a lot of little kids. I'd love to see the data. I saw a lot of 2-year-olds, the 6-year-olds with those families there. So I love seeing the children getting tested. And so we have the ability to register quicker, because again, unfortunately, they're not taking advantage of the pre-registration, even though staff pushed it. And we were pre-registering people in line with the other volunteers that we had. Assemblymember Rudy Salas came. He brought 2 staffers. They were going through with the flyer, telling people, point your camera at the symbol. You know, the link pops up and you can register. So just a ton of help to hit the numbers that we did. And so all that being said, lastly, I do want to thank Jose Ramirez, who came to Corcoran. As you know, he's contracted with us in his company for the Mask Up program that we have. He took a couple hours out of his day to drive down, and he did free autographs for the community and pictures with people there who came down and he tested. And it was just a good, fun day. And so that's the model, Mr. Chairman. That's the plan I've been talking about since July. This model is here for everyone to debrief through and take a look at. And it would be my hope that as the County Board of Supervisors, we could team up in each of our districts and with the relationships that we have, and move on something that's now proven successful, not only in Texas, where I learned this from, but now in the County of Kings. Take a look at the numbers. It's the most numbers that we've reached at any event in the county. And by far the most successful event where we reached Latinos and farm worker families. And I say that humbly because I'm just happy that we have a proven way to do it. And so now I'm gonna put it in your hands there, Mr. Chair, and our board members. Let's work together and let's start planning here to do these in the churches throughout the county. And the better off that we planned, with the ability at least 2 weeks minimum to promote each event, and possibly even looking at putting some resources behind the promotions of these events on Univision. I believe we'd have the ability to do a lot more people than we did on Sunday. In fact, Sunday in Corcoran was just an experiment. I used zero CARES funds. I didn't come to the county for anything except what Ed sent, the mobile unit and his staff. The food I took care of, thanks to the generosity of people and the help of the church and everyone who came through. But we have monies. If we invest in resources, I believe we could do this. We could do this right. All I did was social media, 1,000 flyers that Ed printed for me. The Corcoran Journal did a story, and here we are just off that, having a nice successful event that I think we could double those numbers and triple and quadruple if we put the time and energy and resources into it. So thank you for hearing me out, Mr. Chair, and the board's time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The way I see it, don't take me wrong, but we started this free mobile testing early on. And it was a 4-to-1 vote. And I'm glad you came around 180 degrees and came to our side and joined us in promoting this. I think Pat Sanchez deserves a big shout out for Avenel. I think they had 193 people did it that day. So it can be done in our community. It can be done by whoever wants to help out, but we got to get the community behind it. And appreciate your effort this last weekend and coming on board with the testing. So appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to take you wrong, but I want to be as very clear as possible. I didn't need to come around to anything. It was always about the plan, and there wasn't a good plan here at the county. And this is the plan that produced those numbers. Avenel didn't hit 193. It was reported that they hit about 120 something people. Also, they tested at the school site. That's where I said they're testing staff that doesn't live in Kings County, non-Latino residents there. So numbers don't mean anything if these aren't Kings County numbers and aren't people, a population that we need to reach to put out our outbreaks that we've been well aware of since July. So I don't want to just let that slide. I put in a lot of work, a lot of time, went way out of my way on my own without coming to you for any money, CARES funds, anything. And I went above and beyond. So that I'm not going to let that go right there. That's the proven plan there for you. Either you take it and you show you care, or you just let that sit there and keep talking about Avenel. That's not going to get it done. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Good. Okay, we'll move on now to, are we done with this item?
That's all I have for this.
That's all you have? Okay, at this point, we're going to go to study session. County Council, Lee Burdick.
Good morning, Supervisor, Chair, and the board. Diane Freeman is going to be queuing up our PowerPoint presentation. And in a few minutes, District Attorney Keith Fagundes will be joining. Diane, can you set that to view whole screen, please? All right.
Diane, can you hear us on the line? If you are, you need to unmute yourself.
I don't think she has capability. She's probably just listening.
She's not online.
You don't even need to go view. She can click on that. She can go to view, and there's another icon. It looks.
Diane, would you please take it to full screen under the view menu or the down in the corner of your screen? All right.
Have her go to slideshow, start from beginning.
Up at the top,
Up at the top.
there is a pull down menu called slideshow. There we go. All righty then. Thank you for your patience, supervisors. I was contacted by the district attorney a few weeks ago who became aware of this recent legislative act, AB 571, which amends the Fair Political Practices Act related to campaign contributions in local races, including county races. I had been watching activity on the county council's network across the state, where other counties were also looking at this and the potential impacts it might have on local races. Consequently, at the suggestion of the district attorney, we decided to bring this to you in the form of a study session to see if this board has any interest in developing or implementing its own campaign contribution limits for county races. Next slide, please. Okay. So ultimately what AB 571 does is it says that beginning January 1st, 2021, unless a county takes control over its own contribution limits, the state limitations on campaign contributions will be extended to apply to those local elections. And I'll go into more detail on that in a moment. That's high level of what they attempted to accomplish here. The legislature stated in its findings that it chose this way because as the law currently stands, candidates for local offices oftentimes receive larger contributions from a single source than it is allowed for state offices. The campaign contribution limit for state office, other than statewide offices, so we're talking about the Assembly and the Senate primarily, is $3,000 per candidate per election. And that amount is adjusted annually by the Fair Political Practices Commission. Violations of the state law are punishable by misdemeanor and specified penalties. I didn't include in the staff report or in this PowerPoint presentation for context that with respect to statewide offices, such as the Attorney General, the Treasurer, Controller, but not the governor, the campaign limitations under state law are $5,000 per candidate per election. And with respect to the governor only, the governor's race has a limitation of $20,000 per candidate per election under state law. Next slide, please. So the way this change was implemented is that previously Elections Code Section 10,003 allowed a county by ordinance or resolution to limit campaign contributions in county elections. The legislature found that many counties have no such limitations, Kings County being one of those counties. As such, they amended Section 10,003 to provide that it will only be effective until January 1st, 2021, unless the legislature acts to extend it. But instead, they chose to replace it with Government Code Section 85702.5 that was added. Under that code section, so this is the new regulation that will become effective on January 1, 2021, a county or city may by ordinance or resolution impose a limit on contributions to a candidate for elective county offices different from the state limitations. A state or a county that establishes a contribution limit will also be responsible for its enforcement and may set criminal and civil penalties as well as administrative penalties if it chooses to for violations of the county ordinance or resolution. The commission, Fair Political Practice Commission, will not be responsible for enforcing any local ordinance or resolution setting campaign contribution limits. And importantly, with respect to the timing, in order for a county's limit on contributions to survive following the legislative changes as of January 1, 2021, that local regulatory structure, those local campaign limits will need to be in effect on January 1, 2021. Next slide, please. So the options before the board, if it chooses to direct staff to come back with a resolution or ordinance, would be, I would recommend to first adopt a resolution which could be in effect as of January 1, 2021, and then implement those requirements through ordinance so that it becomes a permanent part of the county's legal framework and structure. So adopt by resolution and then ordinance limitations on campaign contributions for county elections. If you do that, you can set whatever amount you like. You are not bound to any of the state guidelines. Those were provided for context. If the county adopts limits, it will also need to establish a procedure for monitoring and enforcement because the state will not be responsible for doing that for the county. And the other option, of course, is to do nothing and allow the state limitations of $3,000 per candidate per election to apply to county elections. That's the construct. District Attorney Fagundes has asked to address the board to provide some additional thoughts and input.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So yes, I brought this issue up to Lee Burdick a couple weeks ago, saying that no action had been considered by the board and nothing really was being done. Other counties and my colleagues had reached out to point out that this particular legislation seems to be yet another target towards small counties who seem to not have problems with campaign contribution problems, but they want to create an aura that there is problems. And I can't think of a time where anybody's abused the no limits that we've had. And I don't think we've ever had a campaign where large influx of campaign support has come in to the degree that it's somehow skewed the public opinion in our county. And so my colleagues and we have discussed this issue at our meetings, and it appears as though there's this, well, there's certainly an agenda somewhere to have more control over small counties and the local government. So the problem that will occur if we do nothing is that the next step will be a different law that will further curtail our constituents, which is the people of our counties, ability to participate in local campaigns. And as we all know, local politics is really what rules people's lives more so than most others. Now, if you think that Sacramento's judgment is sound and has done a great job with water, then by all means do nothing right now. If you think that Sacramento's done a great job with public safety the last 10 years, then I suppose you could do nothing right now. And finally, if you think Sacramento has done a great job with COVID the last few months, then do nothing right now. But I can tell you that, in my opinion, if we do nothing right now, we will end up with as big of debacles as we have in those other areas with election finance and with people's ability to participate and choose their leaders locally. Because we have a couple other examples of races, congressional races, where one candidate's contributions are 96 or 97% outside district money influencing our representatives. And that's just a problem that I think we need to be in front of. The fact that it is coming to our attention this late is a problem, but there's still time to be in front of it. I will also give some information to the board that the Fair Political Practices Commission has already, not really a limit, but it is a benchmark that in local races, if anybody hits a $15,000 contribution limit, that they must register with the FPPC. Now that is more, there's a burden on the candidate to inform those donors and report it, but there's also a burden on the donor to also report it. So given that that's kind of where we should be focusing anyway, and with our 460s that we file, it monitors all those issues already. So there's a monitoring and enforcement function in that paperwork already. So there's scores of other issues if we just do nothing and just allow Sacramento to dictate what happens in Kings County. But other counties such as Fresno is a $30,000 limit. San Luis is a $25,000 limit. But I would offer advice to the board that a $15,000 limit is probably acceptable. It will keep out outside influence money from influencing our local elections, but it will also be a fair benchmark for people to participate in a way that is meaningful when you are a local person. So that's a nutshell of my thoughts on the topic. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that.
Diane, next slide, please. There we are.
So my question is, if we do nothing, we're going to be punished. But if we come up with our own plan, we can at least prove that we have a plan in place that we can justify, correct?
The word punish is a characterization, but other than that, yes, you're accurate. That if
Okay,
you
so it is. So I know that Fresno County, I talked to one board member one time, and they had outside influence money. The guy raised over $1 million run for a supervisor seat. I mean, for a seat that makes $107,000 a year, it doesn't make any sense. So I understand some of the control, but it's up to us to come up with a plan, correct?
if you choose to act, you can choose your own plan, correct?
Right, but if we don't, we get punished because we're going to be punished with a $3,000 limit, correct?
If you don't, you will be subject to a $3,000 per candidate per election limit from an
Supervisor-
individual donor.
Correct. If I could,
Yes, sir.
Chairman Dragoon, I think punishment, I get where you're coming from on that, and I think that's the ultimate plan is to somehow punish small counties. But I think controlled is probably the better word. And again, if you like how Sacramento controls things, by all means, just let it go. But I'm always fearful of any new idea Sacramento has, is they don't seem to function very well up there.
No, I agree. Thank you very much for that. So control is the word I will use it from here on out. So we form a committee to come up with the guidelines that fit our county needs, or how do we do that?
You could discuss it amongst yourselves, get a consensus, direct staff to come back with a draft resolution, and then we will follow with an ordinance. Once the resolution is passed, the resolution would need to be in effect prior to January 1st. In order to be effective, it takes 60 days for an ordinance to become effective. So the recommendation is to move on a resolution first to follow with an ordinance. Or in the alternative, you could delegate, you could establish an ad hoc committee specifically for this purpose that would have no more than 2 board members on it in order to come back with a recommendation. And then once the board adopts a recommendation, we can move, staff can bring forward a resolution and then subsequently an ordinance codifying the
So
resolution.
the discussion would be happening in open session if we do it amongst ourselves, but if we do in ad hoc, we can do 2 board members do it on the side, come back with a direction and have the board vote on it, correct?
That is correct.
And we just do just a supervisor's race, or do we do Senate, Assembly, and Congress?
You have no control over those other races. You would only be, it would only be pertinent to county races.
So sheriff, district attorney, supervisors.
County Board of Education.
Actually, the elections for school boards can be set independently. The county government would not set those. The school district and community college districts have separate authority to adopt their own.
Oh, thank you.
Happy to.
So what's the board
Question.
desire?
Well, just a couple questions. So with respect to what is in current policy is that there is no limitations, right?
That is correct.
So if we choose to create our own policy says that we have no limitations, is that clarification enough or is it too vague?
I will read you the statute so that we get it absolutely clear. All right. All right, my apologies for not having my finger on that. We're looking at 85702.5, which is all the way at the end of the bill. All right, subsection D. This section shall become operative on January 1, 2021. A county or city's limit on contributions to a candidate for elective county office that is in effect on the operative date of this section shall be deemed to be a limit imposed pursuant to subdivision A. Saying there is no limit, I would suggest is not a limit. And if you take that risk, it is conceivable that you would not have a limit in effect as of January 1, and the opportunity to set your own limits would then be foregone.
I would agree with that. I would also add that you're going to invite litigation to determine whether no limit is a limit. I would agree that finding a number that is comfortable, that fits our county, is the best approach.
And then secondly, this is contributions. So if a candidate chooses to fund themselves, this is not considered a contribution and therefore not under the limitations.
That is correct. A candidate may donate unlimited amounts to their own campaign, nor does this apply to a small donor committee or a political party contribution. This truly is individual donors.
Well, you know, I think we haven't had an issue with not having a limitation. And I think that speaks to, you know, as high a limit as possible. But, you know, that can always come back and bite you, I guess, at some point in time. But just thinking about that. And so if we did on January 1, 2021, institute our policy, it would be locked in for a period of what?
Forever.
As long as you want it.
No, I mean,
Well,
it would
but
be.
what
It
I'm
would
saying
be.
is it would be that election cycle only. If you perceived or saw it, an issue, how long of a time period would you have to respond to issues of abuse that, you know, may occur, and how quickly can you adjust that limitation?
Okay, so I see two questions there. The first one is, if we implement it, for how long would it be in effect? It would be in effect until further board action. It would be adopted by either resolution or by ordinance, and it would require further board action to change that. One of the devious thoughts that occurred to me is that you set a limit in effect as of January 1, 2021, and then what happens if you subsequently eliminate it? Would the statute then fill in? The statute is not written that way. So much like the district attorney just suggested, you would likely be inviting litigation as to whether a subsequently rescinded limitation that was in effect on January 1, 2021 would take you back to no limit, or if the state limitation would then be opposed. Again, it would be risky because if a court were to find against you, then you're stuck with the state limitation on an ongoing basis. With respect to the second part of your question, with respect to if you find a violation or you don't find a violation, you would have to set up your own enforcement structure. While you do file your Form 460s with the elections director, he is not responsible for reviewing them for compliance. And consequently, at this time, nobody reviews those, not the FPPC, not the elections director, and there are no penalties for violations of those. So that would be part of what we would recommend, and then the board would have discretion as to how much and how many county resources it wanted to dedicate to enforcement.
And I guess to be more specific, so we're now in, you know, the next cycle, we've adjusted our policy and we see some abuses. You can't, I wouldn't think you could adjust that policy during an election cycle. You would have to adjust it at the end, or you would be inviting some sort of litigation saying that you're trying to manipulate an election by limiting someone's ability to raise funds. So it would seem like, you know, during that election cycle, there would be some sort of timeline in which the board could then bring it back and say, we want to lower or raise this limitation.
If you're talking about an election cycle being primary plus general election, it is conceivable that immediately following the primary, you could change it so that people who are donating for the general would come in with an expectation as to what the limits are. But the better advised course of action would be to do it after a general election before the next election cycle would be implemented. And yes, I would say, given Supreme Court precedent stating that money donations to a campaign are an expression of First Amendment rights, that the county would need to balance its limitations against those First Amendment rights. And so to the extent someone is going into an election cycle thinking, I can donate $15,000 to Supervisor Neves for his primary, and then another $15,000 to Supervisor Neves for his general, if he ends up in a contest for his general election, that expectation and that opportunity to express their First Amendment rights would be a compelling personal interest to be balanced against the county's compelling interest to regulate that speech.
We have the sheriff on the line. Sheriff, you got your hand up?
I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I looked at this when it came up, and I appreciate that the board's considering this, and so a couple of things, and I apologize if I missed it, but I believe Ms. Burdick said a $3,000 limit on the state assembly senate races, but I believe there's a formula adjustment, like a COLA type adjustment, that now has that limit set at $4,700 is what I read on the FPPC website last week. And so I would just suggest that we do this, and I think the board's right to take this on, but make sure we, whatever limit the board desires to set, make sure that there's adjustments on an annual basis that do take place as, as everything else goes up, there should be adjustments to take in donations as well. So it's not a base limit that you have to constantly look at every year to see if it fits. Secondly, I do think there should probably be a cap. We've seen in some races where individuals, there was a sheriff race a couple of years ago where an individual family was upset with the sheriff, and I won't mention the county, but an individual family was upset with the sheriff, and they did not have limits in place. And this family donated, I believe, around $50,000 against that elected official, simply over one incident that they were upset at. And so I do think that there's a time and a place to have those things. I think unlimited is too much, because we have seen some wealthy people in larger elections, especially in the district attorney races in California, pump a lot of money, individual money, into candidates. And I believe those were done through PACs and the political parties where they don't have these limit restrictions. But I think for the individual donations, we should have some. Personally, I think it should be set a little bit higher than, double the limit, maybe triple the limit of what's currently there. But I don't think, it should be unlimited either. And so, a committee or something to take a look at that would probably be a good thing if that's possible. I know the time is of the essence here. And so I just suggest that the board do take action on this, but set the limits high enough with some escalation factors going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate that.
I'm not that mad at you, Sheriff.
I appreciate that.
Supervisor Valley, you said something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. Mr. Chair, I think for the sake of time here, I think we just kind of need to refocus here. We're not going to solve campaign finance laws. Where, I mean, that just runs amok from Washington to Sacramento. You're not going to solve it. I mean, even if we put a limit, if you put a limit of $1,000 on individuals, what do you see happen? You see the husband in the family is going to max out at 1,000. The wife maxes out. The kids, 18, 19, and 20, they somehow have $1,000 to spend freely. They max out. So we're not going to get around that. So let's not go into the weeds, and let's not get too political and talk too much about Sacramento. I don't think this is the right place to do that, especially when we're talking about this. As far as me, coming from the poorest district in Kings County, money doesn't come easy. In 2008, I had to raise $25,000 for an open seat, and I did. and I did. But that came from a whole lot of people, nickel and diming. When you have the ability to reach wealthier people, you might get that money in 8 or 10 checks. And so I think from looking at the memo, the intent here is just to make sure that, as it says, that in some smaller counties and cities, they see where one single person finances up to 40% of your campaign. And that's where you start drawing the issue. Nobody wants to have somebody give them that much money, then there's a spotlight on you at that point. If you start voting every single way or go out of your way to keep pushing policies that would impact that one person that funded 40% of your campaign, then that's the issue here. I think that if you want to rise above the 3,000 per election, I think $5,000 is something that is fair for anyone. And so I don't know about you, Mr. Chair, but if you go and you pull my campaign finance report, which anyone can, because I'm very proud of my transparency. In 2008, when I launched my campaign, I hired a political accountant out of Sacramento that senators and assembly members use. In fact, my old boss, Assemblywoman Nicole Parr, it was her political accountant, and she put me in touch with the firm. And I pay every month since 2008. I pay these accountants. I have a bank account in Sacramento that I have zero access to. Okay, everything goes to my accountant. Here's the invoice. Can this legally get paid? Every check either gets mailed directly to Sacramento or to my P.O. box in Corcoran, and those checks get mailed to the accountant in Sacramento to cash them. I'm registered with the FPC and the Secretary of State. My political ID number is 103250. I would hope all of you there have that, and your paperwork is across the hall, Department of Elections, where anyone could go pull that. They could go do that today. So you'll see my whole history there. Money comes and money goes. The point is, that's all you can ask for, is the transparency of it. So my biggest check, Mr. Chair, is a $5,000 contribution. That's happened one time in my 12 years. So if $5,000 is being punished, well, I'd sure like to get a copy of your Rolodex and your money list, and I'll start calling those folks too. But 5,000, Mr. Chair, I believe is very fair. We're a small county. And other than that, you're asking for a whole lot of time and commitment, because people have proven, millionaires have proven, when you look at when Governor Schwarzenegger ran in the recall, that, like I said, that same formula, each individual family member, even 18-year-old kids, had $1 million to write them a check. So what are we talking about here? That's not going to stop. The last thing is, here on the looking at my notes real quick, the other thing you could be asking for the potential for trouble for, Mr. Chair, if we didn't take any kind of action and have at least a $5,000 limit, if you we all know that there's independent expenditure committees, and Kings County is too small for that kind of stuff. An IE expenditure committee by law cannot associate with a candidate, meaning if I'm running for office and Friends of Richard Valley pop up and they get registered, they can't come meet with me and say, hey, Richard, what do you need? You know, how do you need, we're raising 20 grand for you. What do you need? TV, newspaper, mail pieces? That's against the law, right? So the county's too small for that right there, because the potential to communicate between candidates and independent expenditure committees, you're just asking for trouble there. So, Mr. Chair, my support would be for a $5,000 limit. And hopefully, as elected officials, everyone is as transparent as I pointed out that I work very hard to be myself. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, but I'm going to take that as an insult. when you talk about people having more money and bigger Rolodex than another one, that's a complete insult to my lifestyle. And I know another supervisor on the board too. I raised $7,000 my first election, never got no more than $1,000 in any donation. And I worked my ass off on that too. So to think that you're above us because you work harder and you're from a poor district is an insult to our spot here. And this is a spot that we talk to the state government about our issues. This is the time we talk about it. And I'm insulted that you think that my district is richer than your district and you raised $28,000 in 2008 and I raised $7,000 and I had a successful campaign as well. So don't talk about my Rolodex versus your Rolodex and being a poor community and versus my community. Because I work my ass off and I don't ask to hand out and I don't get any donations from anybody but my friends and the people that support me. And that's all I'm going to say. And I don't need you to say anything because you wasted enough of our time.
I'm going to respond to that because my comment wasn't to insult you. My comment was respond to your comment where you said Sacramento was punishing us. If they're going to limit us to $6,000-$7,000, you used the word punishment at least 5 times.
And I changed it to control after I was explained to.
I responded to saying that if you feel that's a punishment, a $7,000 check, to me, that's not a punishment. That's a blessing. Okay. And as far as talking about Sacramento on there, Mr. Chair, the reason I brought that up, let's be transparent. There's a member up there who's the elected Kings County Republican Central Committee member, the leader. If they want to be transparent and say who they are, then say it for the first time and identify that. But you can't be in that position and attempt to manipulate Kings County policy from that hat on. So put it out there because it's gone on long enough.
So in my defense, I thought, as it was first explained, I thought the 3,000 was total campaign contribution, not individual.
No,
so I misunderstood. So I felt that might be a punishment that you couldn't raise no more than $3,000. So once I had that explained to me by our district attorney, and I thank him for doing that, I understand it was a control issue. So you know what, Supervisor Valley, I've about had enough of your insulting remarks about money and you're not having no money. Well, then hang up. I mean, we're trying to have a meeting here. We're having a discussion. All we ask to do today is we do nothing or move forward.
You want to silence me again? Is that what you want to do? Hang up? I'm a county supervisor. Y'all have the same amount of power as you do. Hang up on me. Go ahead. See what happens.
Well, you got $28,000. Good luck.
Hang up on me, Mr. Chair. See what happens. Silence my district again and my voice. Go ahead.
Okay, well, right now we're on the item. We're gonna move.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If I can be heard as district attorney again, this matter was brought forward because a lot of these limits are usually First Amendment problems. Any type of campaign tinkering that any government does is usually a First Amendment problem. And people speak through their money, as the county council mentioned. So the only reason for this conversation is not so much for any one of our individual interests, but it's our local government moving forward. And so it's just a matter of, do we put our own limit or do we let state law dictate the limit? And, I too am on the Republican Central Committee. So my comments about Sacramento are not partisan comments, but they are practical comments about what Sacramento has done on all the various issues. Frankly, I don't think they've done a great job. And so I'm entitled to say that, even as the elected district attorney. It's not partisan, it is factual. So with that, it is not meant to be a slight on anybody. I can appreciate that everybody raises their own money. I too have never received large amounts of money from any individual private donors. And it's just one of those things that if this board isn't made aware of what's happening, then things would come and go, and then we would be in a position that it would be too difficult to reverse it. So I certainly didn't mean to cause any consternation amongst anyone. It's just a matter of bringing it forward so we can deal with this for our constituents, not for the rich people in New York or wherever, not even for any one of our individual needs. It is for our constituents to have an adequate voice in choosing their immediate representatives. And first, these kind of limits are First Amendment problems for our constituents and the people of our county. It's the only reason I'm bringing it forward.
Well, thank you for being transparent, Mr. DA. I'm still waiting on the other one as well.
Okay, thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. At this time, we need to decide whether to go forward or move on with ad hoc or discuss it amongst ourselves. Supervisor Valley's already put something on the table at $5,000. He's good with that. Doesn't matter to me. I don't get that kind of money. So 3,000, I'm good with that too. So I would like to hear the other board members' comments.
I guess point of clarification, Mr. Chair, our judges, we talked about the county elected officials, but what about judges?
Those would be state offices.
And and what limits do they have currently?
As the sheriff just pointed out, having been adjusted by the Fair Political Practices Committee, $4,750, which is adjusted from the statutory max of 3,000.
And their adjustment handle is done annually or every 2 years?
By election, it's individual computation. So at any point in the time between elections,
They can change that.
you're talking about the state?
Correct.
Conceivably. I would say the answer is yes. Would it be advised? That's another question entirely. For the exact same reasons that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, because to my knowledge, there's only 3 county officials, constitutional offices, the sheriff, the district attorney, and the assessor that are countywide elections, other than the judges, which are state officers. I've been trying to think. I don't believe there are any school boards or any other, elected or appointed offices that are countywide.
Supervisor Neves, just in case I led to any confusion, these limitations, if adopted and implemented by the board, would be for county elections, not county-wide elections. The law makes a distinction between statewide elections and state offices. Assembly, Senate are state offices, judges are state offices. Statewide would be your controller, your attorney general, and then the governor, of course, gets his own exemption at a cap of 20,000 per election.
And then what about special districts that extend beyond different counties, whether that's mosquito abatement, conservation?
That's a very good question. Those did not fall within the statutory language. So presumably they're free to go on about their business without any campaign limitations. This only applies to local, county, city, and school board, community college districts with respect to the state limitations being extended to them if they don't implement their own.
Yeah, and I can only think of a couple, and most of them are school districts, but there are some irrigation districts, conservation districts, and mosquito abatement districts that you don't really campaign because they're joint powers agreements and they come from. And so how does that affect that standing when you are elected locally, serve regionally?
Unless the local board has its own limitations, they are allowed to collect unlimited amounts of money from individual donors.
So it probably should be conceivable that we adopt the same limits as the jurisdictions that we also serve on.
Or
Fresno County, Tulare County, where we have joint powers agreements and we have multiple jurisdictions.
if those are elected positions, for the ones that are elected locally, you could set campaign contribution limits. That is not foreclosed from the statute. It's not preempted. You would be free to do that.
And do we know what Tulare and Fresno County limits are?
We do not.
I was under the impression that we were only able to accept $1,500 per individual.
Correct.
So this raises it $1,500 more.
Right.
No, we don't have a limit. We don't have a limit of 1,500 per candidate.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
That's
It's
unlimited.
unlimited. We never established a limit.
Yeah, I thought it was 1,500.
Yeah. I guess, Mr. Chair, I would, to move this thing along, I guess I would like to know what Fresno and Tulare County has done, be able to serve on some of those regional, I think it would be a disadvantage. And even though, you know, I really don't, I guess I'm more nosy than anything, as to what Tulare and Fresno, and even Madera, because even I think the Air Board is about the only 9-county region, San Joaquin Valley. I think that's probably the largest joint powers agreement, because the San Joaquin Valley, the rail authority is
9 counties.
so that's about the same. So,
But we don't campaign for that.
well, but you serve on that as an elected official.
Okay, so we can get money from other counties, other people outside our county for that we represent that person on that.
Conceivably.
Okay, all right.
Conceivably. And that's why I don't want to put any Kings County elected official at a disadvantage. And granted, there's only one representative on the Air Board. There's only one representative on the San Joaquin Valley Rail. You know, the Cal Viva I said on a, you know.
Well, council of governments too.
Well, but that's only county. I'm talking about region.
Well, there's like 9 counties in council governments. But I represent our county with other.
Oh, on the regional card. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I guess.
We would need more information on this.
Yeah, I guess I would, yeah, I would kind of like to see what the limits are regionally. Again, because we all serve on different, whether it's ATAAA, Cal Viva, the Air Board, or the San Joaquin Valley Rail. I think there's regional approaches. I think the sheriff and the district attorney, as well as the assessor that have countywide offices, have a little bit different situations as well.
Well, should we just form a committee to do some research? Only 2 board members. Can we have other electeds?
Correct. 2 board members, several elections.
No, it's got to be just 2 board members. If you put other people on it, it will become a Brown Act body.
So,
well, and then you just have to publish a Brown. You just have to publish.
Well, and that's an option as well.
Yeah. So you just publish an agenda.
I don't want to make a rule that affects.
Well, you'll have to.
Based on what I do on election. I know Supervisor Valley talks about he's raised more money than I have, but.
I didn't say that. You're turning around what I said.
I don't see me making rules on his election because I don't know what, he has a bigger district. He needs to make more money than I do. You have a different district.
Hey, you're the chairman of the board. Do you want to be professional and have policy, or do you want to act like a first grader? How do you want to move forward, Mr. Chairman? Because you've already insulted my seat. You've already insulted my district. You continue to do this. Other people up there, county council, you guys all continue to do it. So how do you want to move forward here? I'm trying to have an adult conversation with you. A professional conversation with you.
Well, what I said was I'm trying to find a balance here because I don't think it's good for me to decide what you can or can't raise in your election. And I don't think it's good for me to make a decision to what the sheriff can make on his or her election, or the district attorney, or the assessor. So I need to find a balance here. No insult on anybody, but I don't raise as much as you do. And I don't know about Supervisor Neves if he raises as much as I do. So we got to find a balance here. We don't want to restrict anybody that needs to make more money because of the size of their district.
It's not about the size of the district. So we're going to have a conversation. Let me add, my opponent raised 25,000. That drives you to have to match that to be competitive. This last time around, I didn't have an opponent. I didn't go out and raise $25,000. Okay, that's what that's about. Anyone who runs for elected office knows that. That's what that's about. So could we get past the confusion of that and keep moving forward? It's on our agenda. Somebody brought it up. sounds like the district attorney brought it up with county council. Therefore, it is on us to make a decision, but I am also like you. I don't want it to be based on just us. You have sheriff and DA's race that I would assume opponents could raise a lot more money than what we have had to for supervisorial seats. And I do want to be open to that on how this would affect them as well. I believe those are bigger budgets there.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you agree with me on that. So, Rebecca, you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. District Attorney Fagundes did answer Supervisor Nev's question that Fresno is set at 30,000, Tulare County is set at 25,000.
Per individual donation.
Correct.
Okay. So if you want to base it on that, then we could go by population or just leave it like theirs and copy theirs and we're done with it.
I would
just from a structural standpoint, now we're setting a limit. And so we have to have some structural designation on who monitors. I mean, how do we monitor? Where does that reside?
That would reside in the ordinance. Likely because the elections director is the recipient of county contribution filings, would be responsible for reviewing them to see if any individual donor contributed over the total. And then you would have in place automatic penalties, likely automatic administrative penalties, civil penalties. Misdemeanor would have to be referred to county council for prosecution, or in the alternative to the district attorney for prosecution, depending on the penalties associated with a misdemeanor.
Council would also come into effect the different deadlines, right? So the closer you get to election day, sometimes you're reporting every 24 hours by law, or you're reporting every 2 weeks, just the way the structure is set. So wouldn't that also trigger to let somebody know, hey, this candidate accepted a single contribution above and beyond the limit, because they would see that through the by law, all that has to be filed across the HOD, Department of Elections, correct?
That is correct, Supervisor Valley. The county likely would not want to create a new reporting requirement that would be different from the Fair Political Practices Committee's commission's filing deadline. So once those reports, those 460 forms are lodged with the elections director, then someone in that office or that department presumably would be responsible for doing a look-see over the filings. And then that, if they found an individual contribution exceeding the county limits, they would be responsible for the triggering the enforcement mechanisms in the ordinance. The way it goes, if this county does not act, would be the forms would be monitored and enforced at the FPPC. And with respect to an earlier point that Supervisor Neves made, I just want to be clear. You do have the option of creating a committee, not an ad hoc committee. That's the 2 supervisors only. That would not be a Brown Act body. If you wanted to investigate and formulate a recommendation for the board, you could also do it on a full-blown Brown Act committee, which could be inclusive of the district attorney, the sheriff, public appointees, whoever you wanted to be on that. It would be, I know I'm singing to the choir here, it would be more than just posting an agenda. The public would have a right to join every single meeting, hear the discussion, comment, and participate.
So we could have an open meeting with all electeds that are affected, and everybody put their input in, and the public will be invited, correct?
You could do that as an.
I mean, like I said, I have no business putting a limit on someone else's campaign, because the way I do mine is different than everybody else's. I know Supervisor Valley was offended by I said that, but that's my point. I don't know what anybody makes. All I know is what I do myself. And so I don't think it's fair for me to make a decision based on a rule come down from Sacramento government to control someone else's campaign. I know the sheriff has a bigger district than I do and has a bigger campaign than I do. And depending on an opponent running against him, it may go up. So I think it's important that we have an open discussion amongst all leaders that are elected at a future board meeting.
Very good. We will bring it back next week or the week after for that discussion.
We're all good with that?
Yeah.
And Keith, you online, you okay with that?
Yes, I would suggest next week, as the 60-day limit is really going to push it to the 1st of January.
Well, actually, we're beyond the 60-day limit for having an ordinance in effect on January 1, which is why I would recommend we go with a resolution first and then memorialize it memorialize it in an ordinance following the resolution. The statute allows you to adopt the limitations by resolution or ordinance. Ultimately, it should be in the county code of ordinances, but we don't have to do that by January 1 if we have limitations memorialized in a resolution at that time.
Okay, so we'll have it in a future meeting, probably next week, and all electeds that are affected, make sure you're there so you can add to the limitations that we need to put up with, correct?
Correct.
But,
And
but
in
how
the-
are you going to send a letter to every elected official? I mean, how is that word going to get out? Because when you say that, I'd assume city council members as well.
Actually, cities would be responsible for adopting their own limitations, or
Okay.
they would be subject to the state limitations as well. This would just be for county offices.
Are CSD members under that county umbrella? CSD board members, they're elected officials.
Not at this time. As I mentioned to Supervisor Neves earlier, special districts like that do not fall within the limitation at this time.
Okay, so then who are we missing that's not here today then? Just the assessor?
Superintendent of schools.
But they would be responsible for doing their own.
Through their own.
Yeah.
So,
So as long as we have the people that have to raise the most versus people that have to raise the least in the same room, we can come up with a solution.
and just looking at Fresno counties, the 30,000 is an election cycle, primary and general election, not per election.
Well,
So that clarification also needs to be flushed out as well, because, yeah, sitting there reading the Fresno County, they say per cycle, and then in parentheses, they have primary and general election as they consider as a cycle.
interesting. Yes.
Yeah, they basically have a 15,000 limit per election.
So it's really how you write the ordinance or the.
Well, actually, the way it would be is you could donate nothing to the primary and then $30,000 for the general.
Correct.
That would be the way that kind of limitation would operate.
And especially with the primary setup to where the highest two vote getters. Yeah, that I could see people taking advantage of that as well. So it kind of depends on how you write the ordinance as well.
Yeah. Plus the way they did it, I mean, to me, that comes across as they set a limit, but that kind of money, that's basically saying no limit. That's just making sure they don't get stuck at the $3,000 per election by individual. So, I mean, that's just another way just to be very general in it, to respond to it, to get out of the 3,000. But like I said, my whole remarks to begin with is even this assembly bill is going to cause a mess, just with the Senate and the assembly campaigns too. I did not imagine this conversation going the way it did, or even being a headache on the board. To me, this is something that's very simple just to take care of and move forward on.
Okay, so we'll bring it back next week and make sure the sheriff's here and the DA's here and assessor's here. And we can have a good discussion and set our limits and move forward.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to go to CalCHA and get that out of the way before we go to board member announcements. So Catherine, just go ahead and start into it, or you want to start over?
No.
Okay, today is Tuesday, October 27th. It is 11 a.m. and this is the California Community Housing Agency. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Here.
Richard Valley.
Here.
Doug Verboon.
Here.
Craig Peterson.
Here.
Richard Fagundes.
Here.
Okay, all 5 members are present. We're ready to conduct a meeting today. So we'll start with item number 2, approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes from October 20th, 2020's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Fagundes, second by Supervisor Neves. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley.
Here.
Doug Verboon.
Yes.
Craig Peterson.
Aye.
Richard Fagundes.
Yes.
Okay, we have approved the minutes as presented, and we'll move on now to the consent calendar. All items listed on consent calendar will be acted on by one motion.
So moved. Fair. Yeah.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Neves, second by Supervisor Fagundes. All in favor? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Richard Valley.
Aye.
Doug Verboon.
Yes.
Craig Peterson.
Aye.
Richard Fagundes.
Yes.
Okay, it has approved, 5 in favor, and we'll move on now to public comment. Any public comments? Nobody online? Staff updates?
I
Staff
don't have
updates?
staff update.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Okay, and we'll move on now to board member announcements. Supervisor Valley, you want to start first?
Can you come back around to me, Mr. Chair, please?
Supervisor Peterson,
I defer.
Supervisor Fagundes,
Nothing.
Supervisor Neves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 3 items. Continue to work on the shelter project, and as we continue to look for sites, and we are going to on this Friday tour the Palvero House.
3 times.
Yeah,
3 times.
I keep on wanting to say Palvarado, but it's Palvaredo, the place in Fresno. We're gonna go and tour them. They have been working on this project for 9 months, trying to get it done, and they think they're gonna be online. We had a meeting yesterday, Behavioral Health Board. We have the data net notebook that comes out annually. And so we're gonna have to have a special meeting in November to be able to wrap that up. And then I certainly want to thank Rebecca. We talked a little bit about it. The homeless committee has had some issues with staffing. When Ed Hill was the chair, Heather Silva helped us out administratively with that responsibility. And I think we're working on a project to let Sarah move into that administrative role to be able to keep that committee moving. So I certainly want to thank admin and Sarah for being voluntold to be able to do that, and certainly appreciate that because that committee struggles a little bit with staff support. And I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of time, but just somebody to put the agendas together, send out the meeting notices, and keep the minutes. And I think that's kind of important that we have a staff person that has that responsibility and to keep that committee moving as well as it can. There are a lot of busy people on that homeless committee, and so we want to be able to try to keep that committee moving forward. It has been slow going. I will be honest with you, doing the inventory and trying to work on some of these homeless issues. COVID certainly did not help, and we were a little bit behind. But I think by having a dedicated staff person on it and being able to move forward, it will certainly help us be more successful in the future. Ed will finish up the annual report for that committee that did celebrate its anniversary a couple of months ago as we move forward on some of these other projects. But I certainly want to thank Rebecca and staff to be able to support that homeless coalition. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Supervisor Valley.
Yeah, you know what, Mr. Chair? Unfortunately, just these comments from earlier, I'm gonna put this on the record that my first meeting back with the Board of Supervisors was a month ago. From March, I was right here from my living room like I am today. Every single meeting working on COVID. My first meeting back in the chambers with you I get asked to leave the room, threatened with sheriff deputies, all this nonsense from county council. Here I am, my 4th meeting back. I'm back here at home, and you tell me to go away. Your words, you've had enough of me, and to hang up.
Well, my apologies. My apologies, Supervisor Valley.
What's that?
My apologies. I was out of line on that one.
Man, Mr. Chair, I try hard to get along with the board, even though, like Sue Peterson says, we're not here to make friends, but really we should be professional. We could debate and all that. That's fine. We're not all going to agree. We come from different parts of the county. I'm not going to always think like you. But it doesn't mean that we need to be enemies on it. But nobody else gets treated like that on the board. You want to talk to Sue Joe Neves like that?
She does worse.
What? I mean, I don't know what people think that they can talk to me like that, because unfortunately, as I will accept your apology, it just doesn't stop here, Mr. Chair. Now I got to deal with the phone calls, just like from County Council's remarks a month ago. The phone calls, the tension that comes with it, the embarrassment of it, the damage to my reputation of it, my district being disrespected and silenced. It's a problem, and I'm only putting on record this last time. It puts the county at liability. That's all I'm going to say. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate your apology. We worked well together. Me and you worked well the other day to go put out some fires at the Tachi meeting that we'll talk about later. We did very well. For some reason, when we get in these chambers, the dais, I don't know why, but hey man, I'm a county supervisor just like each and every one of you. I've earned it. I respect the hell out of each seat. When we leave, county supervisors come and go. Those seats stay there. And that's why you have to respect the seat. Even if you don't respect or like the individual, we come and go. The seats stay there, and we should be respectful to that. And I'm not a saint. I argue with you guys, but I try to do it in a gentlemanly format. There's rules to this on how to do it. And I try to do it. I try to do it professionally. But it doesn't have to do with the Zoom meeting, because it happens to me on my first meeting back. But that has to stop, man. That has to stop. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, the only thing I was offended by was the fact that you pointed to you'd like to have our Rolodex for the high-end donors, and I don't have any in my district, and I take offense to that. I work hard for everything I have, and I don't ask for any handouts. And so anytime anybody talks about financial and puts me in a category where they say if they had my money, they'd burn theirs, I really get offended by it. Not just you, but by anybody, and I defend it to the death. I get up early in the morning, I go to bed late at night, and I put in a full day, no matter what I'm doing. So I take offense that I get handouts, because I apparently have some rich friends. I know my friends, and they're not that generous. So
I hear you. I hear you. And that wasn't my intent. I apologize. That was the intent. The political gamesmanship seems to be an issue here. I try to jockey off a point that you made. It didn't. Now then, when it landed on you, you took it a different way. And so I see your point on that. You explained it 10 minutes ago on that. So I'm willing to move forward on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll go on now to board correspondence.
Okay, 2 items in correspondence. You have from the Hanford Cemetery District their budget for 2021. Also from Public Health, a Prop 65 hazardous material report. Upcoming meetings and events on October 30th, the victim witness art exhibit will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That'll be in their parking lot over by the Victim Witness Building in the Government Center. Also that day is the Battle of the Badges Blood Drive. That'll be over in the Human Services Agency parking lot off of Lacey. That starts at 10 a.m. CSAC, County State Association of Counties Annual Meeting, virtually will be November 12th through the 19th. I will be bringing an item back to your board to discuss the board schedule for that time period. And also the general election on November 3rd. Upcoming agenda items, we have the COVID-19 update next week, employee of the quarter. We'll also have an acceptance of a Prop 68 Parks and Recreation donation, an airplane purchase for the sheriff's office. Behavioral health will bring a service agreement with King's Partnership for Prevention to provide outreach and engagement services. And also from Human Services Agency, there'll be an agreement with UC Davis for employee training.
Thank you. And at this point, we're going to go ahead to go to closed session. And we got litigation initially formulated by, the title is Pangaya versus Edmonds, U.S. Bankruptcy Court, Eastern District of California Court, case number 20-12676-A-7, Government Code Section 54956.9 B1. Deciding to initiate litigation, one case, Government Code Section 54956.9 B4 E2. Conference for Labor Negotiator, meet confer, Government Code Section 54957.6, Negotiator Rebecca Campbell, Henny Ring, Jay Johnson of Liberty, Cassidy Whitmore. And it includes Blue Collar SCIU, Detention Deputy Association, Deputy Sheriff Association, Firefighters Association, General CLOSIA, Probation Officers Association, Prosecutors Association, and Supervisors CLOSIA. Madam Counsel, do you see any reporting out?
I do not.
Reporting out seen. This meeting will be adjourned until November 3rd, 2020 at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Will I get a new link for closed session or stay on?
You should have been sent one by Melanie.
Okay, I'll log off. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll start a new session.